I knew something was wrong before I opened the door. Not because of intuition, I'm not that dramatic, but because my mother never visited unannounced. And she certainly never brought my sister Lydia with her unless there was an audience for something. When I stepped into my own condo, they were both already inside. Lydia was leaning against the kitchen counter, twirling my spare key around one finger like it belonged to her. My mother stood in the center of the living room with a folder pressed to her chest and the expression she used whenever she was about to explain why I was being unreasonable. For a second, I honestly thought someone had died. Then Lydia grinned. Hee, she said, looking around at my furniture, my books, the framed photos I still hadn't hung. You're homeless now, Jane? It was such a childish sentence that I almost laughed on reflex. Instead, I set my bag down and closed the door behind me. My mother opened the folder and removed several papers. Your sister needs stability, she said. She has children to think about, and frankly, you always land on your feet. We made a family decision. Family decision. That phrase had followed me my entire life like a tax. It meant my college fund helping Lydia through her second divorce. It meant me designing a car I never drove. It meant holidays where my salary was discussed as communal property while Lydia's debts were described as temporary hardship. I looked at the top sheet. Transfer of ownership. My condo unit number. My legal name typed beneath a signature line. My mother watched my face carefully, waiting for devastation. Lydia was less patient. You can pick up your things by the weekend, she said. I already told the kids they might get your office. Still, I said nothing. I kept reading. There are small things about your own signature you don't consciously think about until someone imitates it badly. The angle of the J, the way I never write my middle name in full on legal forms. The fact that I sign with my maiden professional name because that's the name under which I purchased the property 8 years ago. The document in my hand carried a version of me that only relatives used. Jane Elizabeth Mercer, a name from birthday cards, not deeds. I looked up at my mother. Who prepared this? She straightened. That doesn't matter. It's filed. Lydia jingled the key again. So don't make this ugly. And that was the moment something in me went completely still. 3 months earlier, my mother had called asking for copies of all your homeowner papers because she was organizing family records. I told her no. 2 weeks later, Lydia asked strange questions about whether condos could be transferred privately without sale. I thought she was fishing for money. I should have connected it sooner. But standing there, with my sister already treating my home like seized territory, the pattern finally became obvious. They had not made an impulsive, cruel decision. They had planned theft and expected emotion to do the rest. I took out my phone. Lydia laughed. Calling movers? I scrolled to my attorney's number. My real estate lawyer, Daniel Cho, had handled both my purchase and a landlord dispute years ago. He answered on the second ring. Jane? Hi, Daniel, I said, keeping my eyes on my mother. I'm holding a forged transfer deed for Unit 4C, apparently filed by 2 people currently trespassing in my residence. Would now be a bad time? The silence in the room changed. Lydia stopped twirling the key. My mother frowned, offended rather than worried. Jane, don't be ridiculous. Daniel's voice sharpened immediately. Put me on speaker. I did. He asked me to read the filing stamp, the notary information, the grantee name, the execution signature. I read each line. By the 3rd line, he exhaled through his nose. Well, he said, that's convenient. Lydia crossed her arms. Convenient? Daniel ignored her. Jane, the property is held under Mercer Consulting LLC as trustee purchase, with your professional signature authorization attached to the original deed packet. This transfer is invalid on its face. Wrong grantor name. Wrong signature specimen. And unless your mother became a licensed notary overnight, we also have criminal fraud. My mother actually blinked. What does that mean? She asked. I almost admired the innocence of the question. Daniel answered for me. It means whoever filed that document forged the wrong name on the wrong property. Lydia's confidence cracked first. Mom? I was already dialing building security. Then, because Daniel quietly said, call the police now, Jane, I did that too. The next 15 minutes were not loud. That's what I remember most. No screaming courtroom scene. No dramatic confessions. Just systems. A security supervisor arrived and asked Lydia for the spare key. 2 officers came, requested identification, separated everyone, examined the papers, listened to Daniel explain, chain of title through speakerphone, in the most boring, professional tone imaginable. My mother kept trying to interrupt with phrases like, "This is a misunderstanding," and "We're family." No one cared. Family, I learned, has very little legal standing when attached to forgery. One of the officers looked at Lydia. "Ma'am, did you enter this residence believing ownership had legally transferred?" Lydia's face had gone gray. Mom said, "Please answer yes or no." She looked at my mother the way children look at adults when they realize adults can fail publicly. That was the only glorious part, if I'm honest. Not revenge, not vindication, recognition. For once, someone else was watching them become exactly what they had always insisted they were not. When the officer asked Lydia to surrender the key and step outside, she started crying. My mother turned to me then, not angry, not maternal, just stunned. "You'd call the police on us?" I met her eyes. "You tried to steal my home." She opened her mouth, but there was nowhere left to put the old script. No accusation of selfishness fit inside a fraud report. They were escorted out separately. Daniel told me we'd pursue charges unless advised otherwise after filing review. Building management changed all access codes that evening. By nightfall, my condo was legally and physically mine in every visible sense. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table where Lydia had stood that afternoon. I expected triumph. Instead, I felt tired, because keeping my home was never the real shock. The real shock was understanding that some part of me had still believed my mother merely favored Lydia. Favoritism is painful. This was strategy. This was willingness. This was my family counting on me to panic before paperwork spoke. I didn't flinch because there was nothing left to negotiate. And in that quiet, more than when the officers arrived, I understood something final. Being underestimated had only become useful the day I stopped mistaking it for love.